For more information about our programs, to make reservations, or a tape of today's program, please call the City Club at 1-888-223-6786 or 216-621-0082, or visit our website, cityclub.org. We'd like to welcome guests to the table hosted by the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. Thanks for joining us today. Now we'd like to return to our panel for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphones today are Special Program Committee Co-Chair Ellie Sullivan on my right, and Committee Member Doreen Lazarus Harris in the back over there.
I really enjoyed your presentations, both of you, this afternoon. I'm wondering, though, about the quality of the water in the lake and our drinking water. You mentioned that as time went on, you had to build pipes and tunnels that went further and further out into the lake. What's going on now to clean up the water in the lake?
John?
Well, I could beg off of that and say I'm always dealing with the past and not the present, but the past is the present, and the chief source of water coming into that lake is the Cuyahoga River watershed, and that has been cleaned up tremendously since the 1960s. It's not perfect. There's still point pollution that's going into it. The other issue we have is storm overflow, which brings sewage into the lake. It is vastly cleaner now at the mouth than it was before, but there are all sorts of issues that go along with this, and let me just spin off on this. That our lakefront is a constructed lakefront, as you know. It's fill that has gone beyond the natural lakefront. Much of that fill was comprised of dredgings. The Corps of Engineers began dredging the river channel years ago, and those dredgings were dumped off. Now the question is how much heavy metal and debris was in that dredging. So there's always a question of where that is. But generally, I don't think that our water intake is going to move any further out than it is. And certainly we're not alone, because if you're in Chicago, you can see the Chicago crib just as far off the lake shore as you can see our crib.
Let me follow that. I think in Orange County, California right now, they're going through this huge process of putting in ways to convert municipal wastewater. And it's very expensive, and they're the only city doing it right now, I understand. Is that something other cities need to look at, trying to convert what's on land in addition to just stealing from Lake Erie?
I think so, and that goes back to the point that everything, all the water we consume somehow comes back one way or the other. It gets reconsumed. And to look at a historical perspective, Cleveland had no sewage system until a rudimentary sewer was built in 1856. And the system we know now really had its beginnings in the 1920s, I think. And I could defer to my friends at the table there, Southerly Sewerage Plant, Westerly, and so forth. And we've improved the way that has been handled. But recycling water, making it cleaner for reuse, is very much on the minds of everybody globally now, because our global population increases, our water supply is fairly static. We're fortunate here because we see it and we think we're never going to run out of it, but the rest of the world is confronting these issues. And some of you may have heard, it's not oil in the Middle East that is the real tipping point. It's going to be the issue of where the water comes from and who has access to water.
Mm-hmm. If I could add, we have people coming to the brewery from all over the country, if not the world, for the last 2 decades that we've been in business. And that's always an issue from people from Europe or Asia. Do you mean you'd make beer with that water? And our response is, this is some of the world's best water. All the awards, all the international acclaim or national acclaim we've received for our beer is beer that's made with Great Lakes water. Now we do have a filter at the base of the plant, because sometimes we have fire hydrant changes or pipes that are bursting. There's a rush of materials that have to be filtered before it comes in the building. And then we filter again when we brew to get the chlorine out, because it reacts negatively with hops. But it's great brewing water, and like John said, I think most people would give their eye teeth to have this jewel in their backyard. This is our Grand Canyon. This is our Yosemite, and I don't think enough people appreciate that.
When you talk about filtering the water, what are you taking out? What do you see that comes through there?
Well, in the case of occasional fire hydrant discharges, or if there's a collapse of a sewer, you'll find some grit and insolubles that you want to get out of the system before it comes in the building. And then the chlorine, is important, but in terms of brewing, we don't want it to be part of the brewing process because we are boiling the liquid for hours, and so we really don't need the chlorine. And it dates back to that comment I said about the Middle Ages. People were drinking voluminous amounts of beer because the water was not very potable, and because it was a great product, you know.
Okay.
No, there's an old expression that farmers make wine and engineers make beer, and that's true.
Hello. I've been listening to both of you, and it seems to me we've got two different topics going on. One of them has to do with the, as you put it, the democratization of water, and how water seems to be used, at least in this area, in this region, more and more for tourism, for recreation, for sports, as opposed to a source for manufacturing. And you are talking a great deal about the reusability, the re-engineering of processes, and so on. And I know that both of your groups, you're involved with Green City Blue Lake, which is now part of the Western Reserve. And of course, you have Entrepreneurs for Sustainability that's meeting over at the brewery. So my questions really are based on this being the present. What are the short-term implications for this relationship where we are moving more and more into recreation, into that aspect? How can we further that? What do we have to do with the water to make it go forward? And my question for you is, although you're obviously a model in terms of how you use water and how you recycle and use sustainability, in terms of larger industry or unrelated industries, can you say something about that in the present? Those are my two questions.
Pat, you want to go first?
Well, actually, I think in the grand scheme of things, the home use water is huge. And in fact, if you were to take 100% of your water use in your own home, 56% of it is yards, outdoor use. That's why we're a strong proponent of rain barrels and green roofs, because you could capture that rainwater before it even gets into the sewer system, before it even potentially exacerbates the combined sewer overflow problem where you have the sewage and the rainwater competing to be filtered at the plant. If you could, with the pervious concrete slabs and rain barrels and green roofs, I think that you would really find that that's a far better use of that wonderful product falling out of the sky than what we currently do. And also, I think that in the grand scheme of things, industry figures of consumption of water are far, far less than, I think, recreation or home use or other. Actually, Josh, you could probably confirm that. Is that in fact the case?
Yeah, in terms of democratization, where should we go? I could simply say we should continue to keep doing what we're doing, and that is improving the quality of water, but I'll go beyond that and get onto a little bit of a political edge. We have to increase access to water, and a lot of that is the lakefront. And it's quite interesting. If you look historically where those beaches were, Edgewater and then Gordon Park, they're just where the railroads finally leave the lakefront. We gave our lakefront to the railroads because that was where prosperity lay. So increasing access to the lake, I think, is important, increasing access to the river. And also, one of my colleagues, Ed Pershey at the Historical Society, reminds me that relatively few people who live in northeastern Ohio have seen northeastern Ohio from the lake. How many of you have been on a boat and looked at the landscape from the lake? And there's a lot of work that we do in education at the Historical Society and I think the more that we can get young people who are in the school systems in northeastern Ohio attuned to, familiar with the lake, take them out on boat tours. I mean, it may sound simplistic. That is a totally different way of imagining where you live. And when we get young people to understand that, I think that builds for a better future for us.